Hi, I'm Pastor Steve. Welcome to the Midweek Encouragement Word. Well, if you're a Christian or religious person, you've probably prayed before a meal. You said grace. Well, what is that all about? Where did that even come from? I mean, there's not like a verse in the Bible that says, make sure you pray before you eat. Where did that even come from? Why do we say grace before a meal? Well, there is a verse in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 10, that says, eat, be satisfied, and bless the Lord for the land he has given you. And we see in the Old Testament, in many occasions, as there was these offerings, peace offerings, fellowship offerings, burnt sacrifices, that they would take to the temple, it would involve food, right? Grain offerings and meat offerings. And around that, they would have these sayings and things that they would need to say or praises that they would sing, recognizing what God had done for them, these sacrifices. And in case of the peace offering, the fellowship offering, there was an opportunity for them to partake of some of the food that they were offering. And it became this really tradition so to do, and every time that they would eat, and even after they would eat, they would say a prayer, a blessing for the food, really a thanksgiving to God for giving them this food. We see in Psalm 107 verse 9, he has satisfied the thirsty soul, and the hungry soul he has filled with what is good. We see in the book of James in the New Testament that he says every good and perfect gift comes from God above. Everything that we have comes from God. And so this tradition of praying before we eat, we even see this with Jesus as he was feeding the 5,000 and the 4,000. He took what they had. And it said in Matthew chapter 14, verse 19, he took the loaves and fishes and looking up into heaven, maybe we should look up when we're praying before our meal, he blessed them. And then he broke them and gave them to his disciples. There was this prayer of blessing and thanksgiving before the food was served. And we see Jesus with his disciples at the Last Supper, when he was having the Passover meal with his disciples, that he took the bread and gave thanks and blessed it, and then broke it and gave it to his disciples. The Apostle Paul later saying that he was taking this ordinance, this command of the Lord's Supper, reflecting how Jesus gave thanks and then broke the bread and said, this is my body which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Now in the early church, they would all get together and they would have these big, huge feasts, these love feasts, as well as the Lord's Supper. And Paul had to correct them in saying how they weren't quite taking the Lord's Supper seriously. And I think that is something that you and I need to also think about when we're praying for our food, for our mealtime. It's a great opportunity, maybe 3 times a day at least, to pause and to think about how good God has been to us during breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe even during our snack time or our ice cream at night, to take a pause and to think about how good God has been to us, giving us the food, giving us the resources and the abilities to get the food, to prepare the food, to eat the food, to digest the food, all of those things, to really pause and to thank God. See, when we're praying for our food, we're not really praying for our food. I remember in high school, someone was asked to pray as we went out to McDonald's, and they prayed, God, bless this food as much as you can to make it nutritious for us so that it doesn't give us a stomach ache. We were definitely praying for our food, but we really should be thinking about how to thank God for the food more than blessing the food and trying to make sure that it's good for us. I love the prayers of rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub, amen. I mean, there's got to be some significance in our prayers. I remember teaching our kids to pray before our food and how to give thanks to God. And we each took turns, and our little one, probably about 4 or 5 years old, took a pause, and the only thing that he could come in his mind was to say, na 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 Batman. I mean, bless his heart. And so we are teaching them, we teach ourselves what praying for our food is really all about. It's about giving thanks to God. So I'd really encourage you to take those moments when you pray for your food to really think about how good God has been to you. Taking those moments to thank Him, not just to say a prayer because that's what we do out of tradition and that's what we are supposed to do, or we feel guilty if we don't, as though the food now is no good. We are taking those moments to pause in our day and to thank God for His goodness. Well, thanks for listening. I'm Pastor Steve. Have a great week.